Welcome everyone to ThinklynDEMO. I'm excited about launching this new series of demos here. I got my good friend Gerard Keogh here from Keogh Law Group. He has over 40 years of legal professional experience, and he's here today to talk to you guys about the KLG history of him working with the LPO. And it's an exciting time right now because we're here at SKJ Juris and this incredible building and facility. And let's give a round of applause to my good friend, Gerard Keogh.
Hey, guys. Thank you. My friend.
Thank you, my friend.
First off, I want to thank Mac and all the team at Thinklyn for inviting me here at ThinklynDEMO Asia 2025. We had the pleasure of being in Europe this past summer for the first demo that they did. That was in France, that was in Ireland, that was in the UK. Here, this is our second leg. We started in Dubai for Asia 2025. We're here now in Pune, India. I can't tell you what a great city that is. Folks, out there, if you've never been to India or if you are now planning to expand your business, if you're a small or medium law firm, or if you're a solo practitioner and you could be in the middle of the country in the United States or in a village in the UK, you can scale globally because of the people right here, the experts here in Pune, India. It is a startup city. It is filled with all sorts of professionals, great lawyers, fantastic lawyers, engineers, AI specialists. And we're going to get into that. And that's one of the things that ThinklynDEMO is really covering very, very well. Our next stop after this is in Bangkok. And from Bangkok, we go to Taipei. And by the way, another shout out to Pillow & Tea, the logistics firm that is in the KLG incubator. They worked with Mac over at Thinklyn, and they have created all the various logistics and hospitality. And what they do is they know how to work with the local experts. And one of the things about SKJ Juris is they're not just great lawyers. They are really well networked here in Pune. And what they were able to do is work with Gabby over at Pillow & Tea and collaborate on these beautiful hotels that we're staying at, 5-star hotels, the meals that we were having, out of control, so good. So I want to thank everybody over there. Now, I also want to thank our host, Sabri Ghosh, Pankaj Jain. First of all, longtime friends. These guys are top flight lawyers. They're hosting here in this fantastic city that we have in this wonderful state-of-the-art studio and facility. If you are going to do business development, if you are going to be training, if you are thinking about going global, start it right here. This is the place to do it. We have a state-of-the-art facility that's being provided to us for this presentation. And I want to thank Thinklyn and for everybody who showed up here on a Saturday morning. I want to thank you guys for inviting me to speak here. And I want to talk about the LPO. Let's talk about that sector. You're a small lawyer, a solo practitioner, an SME firm, and we see that the market is contracting globally. There is a global lawyer shortage, whether it's in the United States, whether it is here in India. This is a country of 1 billion people. There's only 2 million lawyers, so do the math. That's on there. So you need to have a firm that is capable of augmenting your work. If you're a solo practitioner, you don't have the time to do your work. Forget about marketing. And how do you even market today? This is not like you just take out an ad and put it in a newspaper. I mean, people don't read newspapers anymore. You need to have a digital development firm that's able to take that social media. Now, I can't tell you how many times I speak to lawyers and say, I don't have time for social media, but you got to find the time to find the right people. And there's a concept that you're going to hear throughout this presentation of this ThinklynDEMO Asia 2025 is the Global Capability Center. Now, get this, guys. If you're out there in the small towns, if you're an SME firm in New York City or London, and you're saying, how do I grow? How do I expand? How do I deal with this? I'm going to get put out of business. I'm going to get squeezed out of business. The minute the economy falls down, the big firms come and take the little fish that come on my table. How do I survive that? How do I get that resilience? How do I take resilience and turn it into survival? It's all about networks. It's all about developing that strategic alliance with the right people. The right people. And today, you have to be able to adjust to very rapid market conditions. AI. Sometimes you hear small lawyers and you hear young associates saying, is my job going to be replaced by some bot, some AI-driven technology? Don't be afraid of that. Embrace it, own it, control it. But how do you do that? Strategic alliances. Now, I'm going to tell you, as 40 years, how you can survive as a lawyer. And I'm going to show you how things change and how you have to change if you're going to not just survive. That's one side of the coin. What's the other side of the coin that you heard falling on the ground this minute or so ago? Thrive. You don't want to survive. Anybody can survive. Well, maybe not anybody, but you want to thrive. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about how Keogh Law Group started. I got out of law school. I was a criminal defense. I loved it in law school. That was my passion. I loved civil rights. I was going to school down in the South of the United States, and the civil rights movement was only just coming into a click. I worked for the Louisiana Hunger Coalition, great organization out there, learned a lot. And we were a civil rights organization. We were organizing the African-American women along the Mississippi Delta who were being exploited by the captains of industry. At that same time, my ancestral homeland, Ireland, was being ravished by the colonizers. The hunger strikes were going on, and it was a stunning thing for me to see. Here I am in the Mississippi Delta, trying to do the civil rights work that I was attracted to. And on the TV, there was the hunger strikers, these 10 young Irishmen who had nothing to do left. They petitioned, they brought lawsuits, people demonstrated, and the world said nothing. So they went on a hunger strike to show the injustice that was going on against our people. In our own country, the United States of America, it looks like they took sides. Irish need not apply. Well, as a civil rights lawyer, I was enraged. As an Irish American, I was doubly enraged. When I got back to the office and the hunger strike was on the television, the young African-American lawyer who I was working with said, "What are you doing here?" And she was right. I got on a plane. I went over there and we attended the demonstrations to support, to end the massacre that was going on to our people. And then I got that bug. I said, yes, I want to take what I learned as a civil rights lawyer and I want to represent our people because you know what? The only thing that our people were getting at is that gun, the gun, the gun. The enemy of the lawyer are the guys with the guns. If there's no justice in those courtrooms, then people will get that justice somehow. And if it's at the end of the barrel of a gun, they're going to do that. But that's not what we do as lawyers. What we do is we try to say, no matter what, we're going to state a cause, argue the case, and eventually that injustice will get undone. And I got back to New York. I still had to find a job. So I worked for a criminal defense attorney. Great guy. Fantastic. Law offices of Morris Craigs. Fantastic man. A man who was also embedded into the civil rights movement. A man who was a victim of a lot of discrimination when he was a young lawyer. And a man who also knew that a lawyer's job was to represent people, even if you found them reprehensible, even if the acts they did were reprehensible, because having a police state was much more reprehensible. So I learned a lot from him because I wound up representing people I didn't like, who did horrific things. But what always kept me going was the fact that a police state, and I knew what was going on in Ireland, where there was a police state, a sectarian state. I knew that that wasn't a good thing. So I then decided that I needed to get to court quicker than Mr. Crapes wanted me to go in. He said, "You're a young man, be patient. Patience is a virtue. But when you got a sense that you can do something now and you want to do it now, I wanted to grab it now." So I went to a medical malpractice law firm. And I really wasn't attracted to medical malpractice until I realized that in the United States, one of the worst things that can happen to somebody is to get sick. Well, number one reason for bankruptcy in the United States, someone got sick. So I started realizing that the medical profession and the insurance profession were in some sort of collaboration, and that the only way you could get justice was to have these medical malpractice lawsuits. So I bonded with my clients, and we fought really hard to get justice for them, but it still wasn't good enough. And this is what I noticed that a lot of lawyers in my generation were doing, was they were deeply embedded into civil rights movements and criminal defense and advocating for people who could not advocate for themselves. And there was a lot of us. So we came out and formed our own law firms. And that wasn't even good enough for us. We formed our own activist, community-based bar associations. And we started representing the refugees that were coming to the shores of America, because there used to be a concept that give me you're poor, you're tired, you're homeless, and you come here and enjoy the American experience. And what will happen is what we know happened. The refugees that we represented, who were targeted by right-wing elements that said, hey, they don't belong in this country, they turned out to be people who built companies that employed Americans. Now, what we found out was that our bar association was inundated with so many refugees that we didn't know how to fund this, because we had to eat, right? We had to make a living, correct? So what we wound up doing is we decided to do what lawyers do. We were confronted with what? A market stress point. Important point. It's tied into the LPO. Market stress point. We were confronted with this market stress point of how do we fund this litigation that would support us in pursuing the passion that we had, the passion of the law. And we have a lot of young lawyers in the audience today. And that passion of law is one of the greatest callings you can do, because we know we have a world that's racked with violence, armies, bombings. We are the stop to that. We're the stopgap. You want to stop that, make sure those courts are real, make sure they're independent, make sure those lawyers have the capability of going in there and arguing the case. That's our passion. That's our calling. But somebody has to fund that. So we decided to get into the transaction side. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what it meant. But we sat down and we addressed that market stress point, and we said, wait a minute, some of these people we represent own bars now. They own construction companies now. They own logistics companies now. Because remember, they weren't getting employed because of where they came from, so they started their own businesses, and they were successful. So we said, let's leverage that. Let's get in there and learn what it takes. Well, that means you had commercial leases. We started learning that. You had to have liquor licenses. We started learning that. They wanted to come out and acquire distribution rights. We started learning about mergers and acquisitions. We were taking that, what we had learned, we funded the civil rights work that we were doing. And everything was going great, really great. And then you come to the hot 90s. Things couldn't get better. Our clients were booming. We were booming. Things looked like it was great. We were only staying within our community. Our community supported us. There wasn't a lot of lawyers who were in the community but us. We had a steady flow of construction work, a contract work. We had litigation. We had contract work. We had leasing, commercial leasing. We had distribution. Everything was going really great. And then all of a sudden, we started thinking, let's go outside our community, because now they were talking about that climate crisis, climate change. So my friend, who was a colleague of mine in our community, Gerard McCabe, he's in the audience here, guys. He's right there, Gerard McCabe, handsome fella in a gray suit with the gray hair. We said, hey, listen, why don't we learn, like we did the last time, let's learn about CDMs. Let's learn about those who are carbon derivatives, and they were going to be a transaction. We learned how to do that. We then went out to learn about how to create a stronger community around the climate change. we met a wonderful, wonderful guy who's now a top developer in across the African continent, Carl Boyce from Arc Power. And we learned about how we could work together to learn how to monitorize carbon reduction and new renewable energy transactions. And our friend Gerard McCabe took us over to the New York commodities market, and they said, listen, guys, oil's dead. Carbon's king. Learn how to do this. Well, we were very happy because we were learning that. And you'll be able to fund these projects because we're looking for projects like we're doing over in Africa. Well, I went over to London. We went over to Kigali in Rwanda, and we had a great little thing going on. It looked like we had a transaction that we could make money on, and it looked like life was going to go on, and we started working on that for about 6 or 7 years. Then I went over to London again to close out what was going to be a financial package that we put together. Financial crisis hit. While I was in the plane coming back from London to New York, you had all these collapses of the banks. Bear Stearns, which was a big supporter of ours, collapsed. Now, it's not like today when you're on the plane, you can get an email with each other. I mean, I was sitting there thinking like everything was going great until I landed and I got a million calls from Gerard on my cell phone. And I said, what's this all about? And he says, get into the office immediately. We have a crisis here. And at first I didn't fully understand that crisis. I just said, well, okay. But he said, no. Within 2 weeks of that collapse, Gerard had projected this. He says, listen, without Bear Stearns and without that financial institution, those carbon markets are going to collapse. And sure as could be, they did collapse. And now all of a sudden we were in trouble. Then what happened was there was no money for those financial projects, those construction projects that we were going to be representing both on the transaction side and, of course, the litigation that would naturally come from that. And all of a sudden now our clients were turning to us and saying, can you guys help us out? In addition, there were investigations that were resurrected by law enforcement concerning the way those transactions unfolded. Why did some of these companies collapse? Why they didn't collapse? And they were looking for us to nurture them, to get them through this tough time. Market stress point number 2. Now think about this. Resilience and thriving. We were thriving. Now, it would be easy to say, oh, this ain't going good. What am I going to do? Do I just close shop and go work for a big firm? Lose the passion that drove me to law? Banging out some numbers from some big corporate law firm? Bankruptcy? Everybody said get into a big bankruptcy law firm. Or do we figure out some other way to do this? Because we liked what we did. We liked our independence. So first, I sat down with my colleagues and we came up with various strategies. Concept generation. Concept generation is something you'll hear later on in this Asia Demo 2025. That's what entrepreneurs do to come up with brand new products and services. That's what me and Gerard sat down with other comrades in our community, and we came up with some varied products and services. But they were going to take too long to do that. Clients still needed us to subsidize the litigation that they were now being confronted with and investigations that they were being confronted with. So what did we do? Pack up and go to a bankruptcy firm? There was one other guy, great lawyer, Eamon Dornan. Eamon's out there in Belfast. Big shout out to you, my brother. Eamon said, I worked with a guy named Sabi Ghosh. Sabi Ghosh is that handsome gentleman sitting over there. And he said, in Mysore, in an LPO. I said, what's an LPO? Legal Process Outsourcing. I called Eamon up. I said, Eamon, I have a problem. I want to come over to Belfast to talk to you about. He assumed it was a civil rights action, which, great assumption. When I went over there, I just didn't want him to come over and deal with my problem on his nickel. So I figured I'll go over there. And I sat down, tell me about this LPO that you tried to sell me 10 years ago. And I tell you, yeah, I don't know about the LPO. I don't know where, I can't even put India on a map. So thanks a lot, Eamon, but I think we're okay. But now I felt a market stress point. I had clients who we built up who needed us. More important, they needed us, our passion, our calling, protect our clients. I said, okay, Well, tell me about this. He says, there's a guy named Sabi Ghosh, great guy, worked with him in Mysore, India. He was an LPO, legal process outsourcing. What that does is you take your clients who you're now working, you can gain a brand new, because we couldn't hire anybody to help us out. We were too busy subsidizing our clients. He said, for a fraction of what they charge in the United States. More importantly than the money is the time. They're 10 and a half hours for you in the winter, 9.5 hours in the summer. And he said that will extend your workday to be 24/7 if you need it. So we then said we had no choice. I met with Sabi and Pankaj Jain. By the way, great transaction lawyer, great IP lawyer. Anybody out there in IP land, especially now with your AI, there's Pankaj Jain. He's your lawyer. You want to use him. We met. We talked. We then did our due diligence. Even though I trust Eamon with my life, I owe a duty to my clients to say, I didn't hear this from a good lawyer. I did my own due diligence. So there's a concept that you have in transactions world called a proof of concept. What they offered to me, which I thought was a stand-up thing, was you send us a job and we'll do the job. Well, I wasn't going to send them a live job because that's something that we were working on through the night. Gerard McCabe and I used to work through the night. We had a lot of donuts and coffee. And not as good as your donuts here in India, right? We had a lot of donuts this morning. I think we had 2 donuts each this morning. So we heard they're healthier here, though. At least that's what we're telling ourselves. So we worked through the night on, and then I sent you over to Sabi and Pankaj a project that we already completed. We already did the research. We did the briefs. They sent it back. We didn't show them that brief. They did a really good job. And it wasn't perfect. It's like when you give it to a young associate. So we worked with them. Now we gave them a live job. We gave them that live job. That was something that, because we were overwhelmed. We were overwhelmed with criminal investigations. We were overwhelmed with the civil litigation. And then we found out that with a couple of renditions and working with them, first of all, they were very open, honest, dedicated lawyers. We met a young lady back then. Her name was Anulka. She's in the room here too. Great lawyer, phenomenal lawyer. Anulka, we started working with on a regular basis. We went from 12 renditions, which, by the way, because we're very demanding, Gerard and I mean, if we're working through the night drinking, well, hey, Dunkin' Donuts, this is a shout out for you because that's who we used. We used Dunkin' Donuts and coffee. America runs on Dunkin', where we were running on you, brother. And what we did was we sent our projects out to Anulka and Sabi and Pankaj, and we went from 12 renditions down to 2 renditions over the years. The work is absolutely phenomenal. Now, that market stress point got us through the difficult years. Eventually, what happened was the financial crises settled out. The growth pattern wasn't quite there yet, but we clearly had a settlement of the crises. But something else developed. Gerard and I said, look, let's go over and explore how we can kind of grow now. We trust these people so much because they helped us out in a time of duress. You know what? Good time Charlies, they're a dime a dozen. When things are going good, how many pals that we used to have who come and say, I want to do business with you guys. You guys represent this big construction company. The minute problems happen, good time Charlies go away. But what you do remember are those solid lawyers who became friends of ours over the years. We said, let's go to India and let's conduct a training session. This way, we can be sleeker. We can bring in more work. We can ourselves go out and develop business outside our community. Well, Gerard and I traveled over here. The first year I wasn't able to come because I got sent out to trial in July. I won't mention who the judge is, but you know who you are. What happened at that point was Gerard said, hey, listen, they got a nice facility, blah, blah, blah. Tell me when you can come again. I'll come back with you. I finished my trial. I think it was in October we came back. We were back in October. We met Anilka. We saw the operation here in this beautiful office that they had, and we saw all these wonderful, dedicated young lawyers who would sit here very attentively and listen to and go through our training sessions. Boy, did that pay off in gold, because we then got back and we were confronted with a very complicated case. It's called a trilogy case. That trilogy case, and we had a lot of complicated cases that came in as well. And what we decided to do was to shift off more work over to the LPO, because their response and the quality of the work that they did was so good that we were taking on the biggest law firms in New York City. And we weren't just fighting them punch for punch. We were actually gaining traction, because what does a big law firm do when they're confronted with what they appear to be two small lawyers practicing in New York? They bury them in paper. But we were able to get our e-discovery documents done, because they have a great e-discovery platform, a fantastic e-discovery platform. We were able to go and analyze the documents they produced and say, wait a minute, we don't think they buried us in paper, that these are responsive to our discovery demands. What did we do? We set out the folders of what we wanted to be parked into the folders. They analyzed all the documents. We went through those folders. We were able to come back and put deficiency letters and go to court and say, our discovery demands are being flaunted by the big, powerful law firms. And we had the evidence to prove it. So, what I'm saying to you guys who are small law firms in the UK or in the US, or you're a solo practitioner, and you're stuck saying, I can't market, I don't have time for it, my life is miserable, I'm working round the clock, and I don't get enough money to justify what I'm doing. It's time for you to think about not just surviving, but thriving. And yeah, does India sound like it's on the other side of the globe? Well, I'm going to ask you to look at mgsn.net. It's a digital media company. It's a client of Thinklyn, Mac, the guy who introduced you to me, the handsome young fellow in the blue suit. And I want you to look at the content, the original content they have on there. Because you see, what you get in here is not just an LPO. And you'll hear a lot more about the GCC, the Global Capability Center, is that you're going to notice that Sabi Ghosh was at Boston Tech, which is the great city of Boston, and the campus of Thinklyn in October. Other than COVID, we would come back and forth. It's not the big, horrible investment of time and energy that you have, and it's going to be the best thing you can do. And then you can come over here and you can design your law firm's capabilities right here. They'll hire the lawyers. You come and you train the lawyers. If you want to do it in person, I strongly recommend it. First, you'll have a great workcation. This is a beautiful country, and there's so much to see here. There are beautiful young people here who are so dedicated to their work, their engineering, their legal. The work habits they have appeal to lawyers like me and Gerard, who work through the night to do our briefs. Now, look, we're not so young anymore. The truth is, working through the night is kind of tough to do. Though we kind of did it last night. We did it last night because old habits are hard to kill. And trial horses are tough to put down. So what I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to invite you, and if you want to call me, and you're going to later hear about Gerard McCabe on the transaction side and how we worked with Pankesh on a client that put a very unfair project on the table, but they did such a bang-up job. He's going to tell you about that. But I'm going to invite you to reach out to either Gerard or I, or you can reach out to Thinklyn. Because let me tell you what you get with this package, right? You don't know how to market, but he does. You don't know social media? He does. You don't have the time for social media? They do. They know how to create. They have a publishing house. I, myself, am now a client of theirs because I am now writing a book about some of the trials that we went through, some of the tribulations that were imposed on our people. And by our people, I mean all the people who are at the throes of trying to survive while the very few try to thrive on their backs. What I'm going to invite you to do is come here, get to know these people, get to know the Global Capability Center. So in this Global Capability Center, you've got the LPO, the Legal Process Outsourcing. You've got the marketing and development. You've got, if you are in the digital space and you don't know how to edit and get your stuff done and get it on time, these are the people you want to be. This is where they're set. And you're going to get to see how easy it is for you to now come into this marketplace. It's not the impossible thing you have. Now, let me actually, I'm going to tell you another story. I want to reach out to my young entrepreneurs that are over in the United States and in the UK. Look, we're in a contracting market. Our population is shrinking for some reason. We don't want immigration to expand that. Don't know. I can't get through that. I'm not going to get into that, but I am going to get into this. The markets in South Asia, and in Africa are booming with consumers. It's the age bracket. If you're making cookies, how many cookies are you going to sell to Gerard and I? Not too many plates, right? But you got a lot of young people here who will eat those cookies, but you got to be in this marketplace. Now, I don't know how to get into this market. It's too weird. It's too on the other side of the world. It's too this. Let the Global Capability Center get you where you need to be. Now, you young entrepreneurs out there, lawyers are expensive. Gerard and I are expensive. I don't apologize for it. Well, maybe I should, but I don't. And at the end of the day, what you can do is you go directly to a guy like Mac, he's got a Global Capability Center, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about a Global Creative Center. You go to a guy like Mac and say, Mac, look, I'm an entrepreneur, young, like you. I can't afford Gerard McCabe and Gerard Keogh. He says, no, you can't. He says, but I have a network, you're going to hear about this, of lawyers, and I make sure that those lawyers will not overcharge you because they're going to be part of this Global Creative Center, this Global Capability Center, and they're going to use LPO works. By the way, we do not mark up our clients for the work that they do. What we do is we do less hours. We're no longer, our bills used to be astronomical because we're working through the night. If you're making $800 an hour and you're working through the night, it's a big bill the clients get. But if I ethically disclose to my client that I'm going to shift these hours over here, then you're going to have a great means of containing legal cost. Lawyers who don't want to do that, they're not part of Mac's club. They're not part of the Thinklyn legal business development. And young entrepreneurs out there, don't get yourself in trouble. Because if you get yourself in trouble, it's tough to be a young entrepreneur in a startup. Most fail. They fail because they don't structure. You need lawyers to help you structure, to keep you out of trouble. If you come directly to us, we're going to probably turn you down because you can't afford us. But they have a solution in the Global Capability Center. And you got, I'm telling you, right here and now, 40 years of practicing in courts in the United States, fighting for international arbitrations. These are the guys. These are the gals. These are the lawyers that will liberate you, that will let you get into a structure that will enhance your ability to survive. But guess what? How did I start this? It's not about surviving. It's about thriving. And if you want to thrive, you got to think outside the box. You got to do what I kind of was trying to lay out over these 40 years. Every time I hit a market stress point, we try to figure out the way things were. If I would have stayed in my little shell, our community changed. We were no longer the ones under the gun. The needs of our community changed. But what didn't change was the fact that we needed to keep on going. And we were confronted with a couple of market stress points. So I didn't go to law school to be a transaction lawyer. I looked down my nose at that. That's mere commerce, capitalism. Not for me. No, that's not for me. I'm going to take on the man. I'm going to go into court and I don't care what the police say. I'm going to hold them accountable because this is not the police state. Guess what? we need to fund our passion. So, to recap, we became transaction lawyers. That was going great until what? Market crash. Again, when Eamon first came to me and talked about India, I couldn't pick it out of a map. I failed geography in school. I know there was a globe, looked pretty round, but I wasn't able to pick India out on the map. Now, anytime I spend away from here, I miss it so much. We're so happy to be back here when we come here. It's such a wonderful country. The people are such wonderful people. And what's really so impressive, because we knew how hard we worked when we were 20-year-olds. And we knew what passion we had for the law. Because remember, that separates us from the guys with the gun. We get that justice there. We tell the people you don't need the gun. You need good lawyers. You need a court that's independent. You need the capability of having a lawyer who's not going to treat you like some sort of lamppost on their road to success, but a person in need. You needed that passionate representation. That's what you get here in India. Passionate lawyers who are going to work with you so that you can not just survive, but thrive. Hey, listen, you've been a great crowd. Fantastic. I was very happy to be here. If there's any questions, I'll take them. If not, I'll be glad to sort of move on and get a cup of coffee.
Round of applause for Jerry. Hey. Great job, my friend. Great job. Hey, I just want to, before we wrap it up here, we'll let people ask a few questions to you, but just to wrap this incredible presentation up, again, thank you for presenting to the entire team today. Just a quick question for you, my friend. You did a whole presentation basically on this incredible opportunity for individuals, for startups, for solopreneurs to partner themselves strategically with SKJ Juris. There's a lot of hesitation, and we have this incredible opportunity because we're in Pune, India right now. What is like the short version of this, the pitch to get people over? Because we are definitely dealing with a cultural difference and hesitation from people in the United States of partnering here. And for them not to see this incredible value that you just presented is frustrating. So can you just speak a little bit to that?
Sure. If you're a startup, you want to have a company, and you look to companies that were startups who are now big, thriving enterprises. What's their secret? India. They use LPOs. They use BPOs, business process outsourcing. They use global capability centers. India, India, India. Now, if you're a small fry, you're a solopreneur, because Gerard and I were small fries, right? When Eamon came to us 10 years ago, we were like those people you just talked about. I said, yeah, that sounds a little too far away. Thank you. But when I was in trouble, remember, this is where you really get to see who your buddies are. The good time Charlies, they were gone. We couldn't even get a hamburger out of them. They were taking us out to dinner because they wanted access to our clients. But when our clients looked like they were on the ropes, they ran for the hills. But these guys didn't. They helped us out. Short version of it, think outside your box. If you don't think outside your box, if you don't move from what you believe is the right way of doing things, and you don't move the market will move you, and you have no business being in the market. If you're so small-minded that you're not willing to even try this, think, hey, listen, I wish you the best. God bless you. But at the end of the day, what the short version of this is, as short as I can make it, is that you call up a guy like you and say, Mac, this guy sounds like he's a lawyer. He said, can you help me out here? But I'm worried about my company. He says, well, I'll tell you what, we got this global capability center here. These guys can't practice law, but they're associated with lawyers like Gerard Keogh. If Gerard Keogh and Gerard McCabe are saying, use these lawyers, we're going to find lawyers like them. And you know what? We're going to cut your legal bill in half. Because you're not going to have to worry about that. And if you give them a budget, and we're going to and you're going to work with me, and I'm going to help you out there, yeah, that's the short version. Don't listen to me. I'm a lawyer. Listen to the guy who is a young entrepreneur. Listen to the guy who's doing the startups. You're going to hear his history. By the way, tune into MGSN because they're going to have his history of how he started as a young entrepreneur working at a public library system in New York City as his office, and built this nice global company up because he knew how to listen to lawyers and understand and get them to strategically align with them, to not only not charge them, but pay them. That's what you want. You want to be able to come to him, and he's going to get you. But there are lawyers that are who are going to be joining. You're going to hear this transaction. It's a wonderful, brand new transaction that's coming out, and you're going to hear from Mr. McCabe when he's going to be talking about this for all you people who turn in an MGSN land. And that's the short version of it. Right, that's as short as I can be.
Jerry, thanks again for presenting. Another round of applause for Jerry. Thank so much.
Thank you, guys.
You guys have any questions, everyone watching online as well, send them to Thinklyn. And again, thanks again for SKG Jurors for hosting ThinklynDEMO. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending.